Jake Morrison stood near the eastern wall of the Crystal Halls, his eyes moving across the crowd of diplomats and nobles from a dozen different worlds. The reception had been going on for 3 hours now, and his feet were starting to hurt, but he kept his face neutral and his attention sharp. That was the job. The hall itself was beautiful in a way that made Jake uncomfortable. Everything sparkled. The walls were made of some kind of transparent crystal that caught the light and threw it back in rainbow colors. The ceiling was so high that Jake could barely see it through the floating lights that drifted like lazy fireflies. Aliens in formal clothing moved through the space in small groups, talking in languages that his earpiece translated into English with a slight delay. Jake was human security for this event. Earth had only joined the Galactic Council 5 years ago, and humans were still the new kids on the block. Most species had been traveling between stars for thousands of years. Humans were just starting to figure it all out. But Earth wanted to make a good impression, so they sent their best people to these diplomatic functions. Jake had been a Marine for 10 years before joining the diplomatic security team. He knew how to stand still, stay alert, and not cause problems. Across the room, Ambassador Lisa Chen was talking with a group of insect-like aliens from the Hive Collective. She was laughing at something one of them had said, though Jake could not imagine what a giant bug found funny. Lisa was good at her job. She could make friends with anyone, no matter how weird they looked or how strange their customs were. Near the center of the hall, Princess Theron was surrounded by admirers. She was Calviri, one of the ruling family of the Calviri Empire. The Calviri looked almost human, which Jake found both comforting and strange. They had the same basic shape, 2 arms and 2 legs, 1 head, but their skin had a faint blue tint, and their eyes were larger and completely black. No whites, no colored iris. Just solid black that seemed to look right through you. Princess Theron was young by Calviri standards, maybe 20 in human years. She wore a dress that seemed to be made of liquid silver, flowing around her as she moved. She was laughing at something an ambassador from the Telcrin Union had said. Her guards stood nearby, 3 large Calviri males in formal armor that somehow looked both ceremonial and functional. Jake had studied the Calviri culture for months before this assignment. They were proud people with strict rules about honor and hierarchy. Touching a member of the royal family without permission was a serious crime. So was failing to bow at the right depth. So was speaking out of turn. The list of things you could do wrong with the Calviri was long and detailed. That was why Jake noticed when something felt off. A server was moving through the crowd with a tray of drinks. Nothing unusual about that. Servers had been moving through the hall all evening. But this one was different. His movements were too careful, too deliberate. He was not looking at the guests he was serving. He was looking at Princess Theron. Jake felt his pulse quicken. It was probably nothing. The server was probably just starstruck, seeing royalty up close. But Jake had learned to trust his instincts. In the Marines, his instincts had kept him alive more than once. The server was getting closer to the princess. He was carrying something on his tray besides drinks. It was a small box wrapped in gold paper. Probably a gift from one of the guests. Diplomatic receptions always had gift-giving ceremonies, but something about the box bothered Jake. The way the server held the tray. The way he moved. The way his eyes kept darting to the exits. Jake started moving before he knew why. He crossed the hall in long strides, his hand already reaching for his comm to alert Commander Kyle Bradford, the head of security. But before he could speak, before he could warn anyone, the box began to glow. The server's face went pale. He dropped the tray and ran. Jake saw the princess turn toward the sound of the tray crashing. Her black eyes went wide as she saw the glowing box. Her guards reached for their weapons, but they were too far away. Everyone was too far away. Everyone except Jake. He did not think about protocol. He did not think about the rules against touching royalty. He did not think about the diplomatic incident this might cause. He just ran. His body moved on instinct. The same instinct that had saved his squad in a firefight on Mars. The same instinct that had pulled a kid from a burning building when he was just a rookie cop in Chicago. He reached Princess Theron in 3 seconds, wrapped his arms around her, and turned his back to the glowing box. In the split second before the explosion, he said something in Calviri. The words came out rough because his accent was terrible, but he said them anyway. "Stay still. Trust me." Then the world became fire and sound. The blast hit Jake's back like a hammer. He felt the impact drive him forward, felt himself falling on top of the princess, felt the heat searing through his uniform. His ears stopped working. Everything became a high-pitched whine. He could not breathe. His lungs would not work, but he kept his body between the princess and the explosion. He felt something wet on his back, probably blood. His blood. That seemed important, but he could not remember why. Around him, chaos erupted. People were screaming. Alarms were blaring. He saw boots running toward him, but they seemed to be moving in slow motion. Ambassador Chen's face appeared above him, her mouth moving in words he could not hear. Princess Theron was beneath him, her black eyes staring up into his face. She was saying something. Her lips were moving, but he could not hear the words. She looked scared. Then she looked angry. Then she looked sad. Her face kept changing, and Jake could not understand why. He wanted to tell her it was okay. He wanted to say that the blast had not been that bad, that he had survived worse. But his mouth would not work. His tongue felt thick and heavy. Commander Bradford appeared, pulling at Jake's shoulders, trying to roll him off the princess. Jake tried to help, but his body would not respond. His arms felt like they belonged to someone else. He saw blue liquid on the princess's silver dress. More blood. Still, his blood. The princess was saying something again. She was shouting now, her face right in front of his. Jake tried to focus on her words, tried to make sense of the sounds, but everything was fading. The crystal hall was getting darker. The floating lights were dimming. Or maybe his eyes were closing. He could not tell anymore. His last thought before the darkness took him was simple and clear. She was alive. He had done it. She was alive. Then Jake Morrison fell into a deep black nothing, and he did not know if he would ever wake up again. When the darkness finally came, it felt almost peaceful. The pain faded. The sound faded. Everything faded, except for one image that stayed with him as he fell. Princess Theron's face, looking down at him, her black eyes filled with something Jake could not name. Then even that was gone, and there was only silence. Jake woke up slowly, like swimming up through deep water. His first thought was that he should be in pain. He remembered the explosion, remembered the fire on his back, remembered falling. But there was no pain. His body felt light, almost weightless. Maybe he was dead. That would explain the lack of pain. But then he heard voices. Dead people probably did not hear voices. Or maybe they did. Jake had never been dead before, so he did not know the rules. He opened his eyes. The first thing he saw was not a hospital ceiling. It was a domed roof painted with stars and planets, so realistic that Jake felt like he was floating in space. The second thing he saw was the faces, hundreds of them, arranged in circular rows that rose up toward that painted sky. All of them were looking at him. Jake tried to move and discovered he was standing. How long had he been standing? His legs felt steady beneath him, but he had no memory of getting up. He looked down at himself. He was wearing a clean uniform, not the blood-soaked one from the explosion. His hands looked normal. No burns, no cuts. "Where am I?" Jake asked. His voice echoed in the huge chamber. One of the faces moved. An alien stepped forward from the lowest row of seats. He was Calviri, tall and thin with that blue-tinted skin and those unsettling black eyes. He wore robes that looked expensive. Dark blue with silver thread woven in complex patterns. "You are in the Imperial Court of the Calviri Empire," the alien said. His voice came through Jake's earpiece translator with a slight mechanical tone. "I am Lord Cassian, legal advisor to the throne. You have been summoned to answer for your actions at the diplomatic reception." Jake blinked. "Summoned? I saved Princess Theron from a bomb. Where is she? Is she okay?" "The princess is unharmed, thanks to your intervention," Lord Cassian said. "However, your actions violated several of our laws. You touched a member of the royal family without authorization. You presumed authority over imperial security. You disrupted a diplomatic ceremony. These are serious charges. Jake stared at the alien. His brain was still catching up. He had saved someone's life, and now he was being charged with crimes? That made no sense. I had to act fast, Jake said. There was no time to ask permission. The bomb was going to explode. Yes, Lord Cassian said. And yet our laws are clear. Personal contact with royalty requires explicit permission. Security matters are handled by designated imperial guards, not foreign officers. These rules exist for important reasons. Jake looked around the chamber again. The hundreds of faces were still watching him. In the center of the highest row of seats, he saw Princess Theron. She sat on a raised platform next to two older Calviri who wore crowns. Her parents, Jake guessed, the Emperor and Empress. The princess looked pale, even for a Calviri. Her black eyes met his for a moment, then looked away. To the left side of the chamber, Jake spotted familiar faces. Ambassador Lisa Chen sat in a section marked for witnesses. Next to her was Commander Kyle Bradford, Jake's boss. Kyle's face was tight with worry. Lisa gave Jake a small nod, but neither of them spoke. They were not allowed to, Jake realized. This was not their court. They had no power here. The first charge, Lord Cassian continued, is unauthorized physical contact with Princess Theron Kalis Valendor, fourth daughter of Emperor Valen. This contact lasted approximately 12 seconds, during which you held her person against her will. Against her will? Jake said. I was protecting her. Without her permission, Lord Cassian said. Among our people, touching royalty without consent is considered assault, regardless of intent. The law does not recognize good intentions as a defense. Jake felt his temper rising. So if I had asked permission first, the bomb would have killed her. Is that what you wanted? Lord Cassian's expression did not change. What I want is irrelevant. The law is the law. It has kept our society stable for 10,000 years. Individual actions, however well-meaning, that ignore established protocol, are dangerous to our social order. A door opened on the far side of the chamber. More Calviri entered, these ones carrying display screens. They set up the screens facing the rows of seated aliens. Lord Cassian pressed something on his wrist, and the screens lit up with video footage. Jake watched himself move through the crowd at the reception. The video was crystal clear, showing every detail. He saw himself notice the server, saw his body tense, saw him start moving, then he saw the explosion in horrifying slow motion. The blast erupted from the golden box in a ball of fire and shrapnel. His body hit the princess and took her down just as the deadly wave of energy passed over them. The footage played from multiple angles. Each time, Jake saw the same thing. He reached the princess in time. He shielded her. He saved her life. And in each video, he also saw himself breaking Calviri protocol. The second charge, Lord Cassian said when the videos ended, is presumption of authority. You acted as security for the princess without any authorization from Imperial Command. Our guards are extensively trained and follow strict procedures. Your interference disrupted their response and could have made the situation worse. Could have, Jake repeated. But it didn't. She's alive. This time, Lord Cassian said. But what about the next crisis? If we allow foreign officers to ignore our security protocols, chaos will follow. Everyone will think they can act independently. Our whole system will collapse. Jake wanted to argue, but he was starting to understand the problem. The Calviri were not angry that he saved the princess. They were worried about what his actions meant for their society. They lived by rules, strict rules that everyone followed. If one person could break the rules, even for a good reason, then everyone would start breaking rules. And that scared them. The third charge, Lord Cassian said, is disruption of a diplomatic ceremony. The reception was a formal event with specific protocols. Your actions, and the resulting explosion, ended the ceremony prematurely and created an incident that has strained relations between multiple species. The bomber created the incident, Jake said. Not me. Have you caught him? The server. Who left the bomb? Lord Cassian paused. The bomber has been identified as a Zrathi extremist opposed to the human Calviri alliance. He escaped during the confusion. But his crimes do not excuse yours. Jake felt like he was losing his mind. An actual terrorist was loose, and they were worried about Jake touching a princess without permission. A voice spoke from the high platform. I request permission to address the court. Everyone looked up. Princess Theron had risen from her seat. Emperor Valen, her father, gestured for her to continue. Thank you, honored father, she said. Her voice was soft but clear, carrying through the chamber without effort. I wish to speak about Officer Morrison's actions. Lord Cassian bowed to her. Of course, Your Highness. Your testimony is valuable to these proceedings. Princess Theron walked down from the platform. The crowd parted as she approached Jake. She stopped a few feet away, maintaining proper distance this time. I saw his face before the explosion, she said. I saw the moment he recognized the danger. His expression changed. Not to fear, but to focus. He calculated the distance, the time, the threat level, all of this in less than a second. Then he moved. She turned to face the court. Officer Morrison did not act recklessly. He acted with precision and skill. He moved exactly as his training taught him, and in those seconds when he shielded me, when we fell to the ground, he spoke to me, in my own language. Do you know what he said? The court was silent. He told me to stay still, Princess Theron said. He told me to trust him. Not in English. Translated through a machine. In Calviri. Spoken directly to me. Lord Cassian looked surprised. Officer Morrison speaks Calviri? Jake cleared his throat. Just basic phrases. I studied for a few months before the assignment. I wanted to communicate with guests if needed. For emergencies. Princess Theron smiled slightly. He prepared for emergencies. He learned our language. He trained his body and mind to protect others. And when the moment came, he did exactly what he was trained to do. He saved a life. She looked at her father. Honored father, I do not believe Officer Morrison broke our laws out of disrespect. I believe he acted according to his own people's values. And perhaps those values are ones we should learn to understand. Emperor Valen leaned forward on his throne. His black eyes studied Jake with an intensity that made Jake want to step back. But he held his ground and met the Emperor's gaze. We will take a recess, Emperor Valen said. The court will reconvene in 1 hour to continue these proceedings. The Calviri began filing out of the chamber. Jake stood alone in the center of the floor, wondering if he had just made things better or worse. The recess room was smaller than the grand chamber, but it still felt enormous to Jake. Commander Kyle Bradford paced back and forth near the door, while Ambassador Lisa Chen sat at a long table, her fingers drumming against the surface. This is insane, Kyle said for the third time. You saved her life, and they want to punish you for it. It's not that simple, Lisa said. She looked at Jake, who was sitting across from her. The Calviri see the universe differently than we do. They evolved on a world with limited resources. Cooperation and strict social order were necessary for survival. Individual action outside the hierarchy threatened everyone. So what do I do? Jake asked. Apologize for not letting the princess die? Lisa shook her head. No. Don't apologize. That would imply you think you did something wrong. Just explain your reasoning clearly. Help them understand the human perspective. Kyle stopped pacing. What's the worst that can happen here? Prison? Deportation? Both, Lisa said quietly. Or worse. Calviri prisons are not pleasant places. And if they declare Jake a threat to Imperial security, they could demand his execution. Jake felt his stomach drop. Execution? For saving someone? For breaking their most sacred laws, Lisa said. I'm sorry, Jake. I should have warned you more clearly about Calviri customs before the reception. This is partially my failure. You told me not to touch royalty, Jake said. I remember the briefing. I just didn't have a choice. I know, Lisa said. And that's what makes this complicated. In human society, we value the individual who takes initiative in a crisis. We celebrate heroes who break rules to do the right thing, but the Calviri fear that kind of individualism. To them, it represents chaos. A Calviri guard opened the door. The court is ready to resume. They filed back into the grand chamber. Jake took his place in the center of the floor again. The hundreds of aliens watched him from their seats. Princess Theron was back on the platform next to her parents. She looked tired. Lord Cassian stood and gestured to the screens. We will now examine Officer Morrison's statement. Officer Morrison, please describe your thought process during the incident. Jake took a breath. He had faced enemy fire before. He had been in situations where death was one wrong move away. But standing in front of an alien court was somehow scarier than combat. In combat, you knew who the enemy was. I saw the server acting strange, Jake said. His body language was wrong. He was too focused on the princess, not focused on his job. When I saw the box start glowing, I knew it was a bomb. I had maybe 3 seconds to act. And you chose to act alone, Lord Cassian said. Why not alert the princess's guards? There was no time, Jake said. Sound travels at about 340 meters per second in air. The guards were 15 meters away. By the time they heard my warning and processed it and started moving, the bomb would have exploded. I was 5 meters away. I could reach her. You calculated all of this in 3 seconds? Lord Cassian asked. His tone suggested he did not believe it. I didn't calculate it consciously, Jake said. My brain did it automatically. Humans are good at that. We evolved to make split-second decisions in dangerous situations. It's how our ancestors survived on Earth. A new voice spoke up from the seats. May I address the court? Jake looked up. A Calviri female in a white robe was standing. She looked different from the others. More scholarly than formal. Emperor Valen nodded. Dr. Marin, you may speak. Dr. Marin walked down to the floor. She carried a small device that projected information into the air above her hand. Thank you, Your Majesty, she said. I am a xenobiologist specializing in human studies. I have been researching human psychology and physiology since first contact. I believe I can offer some context for Officer Morrison's actions. She pressed the device, and images appeared in the air. Jake saw pictures of Earth, of humans doing various activities, of brain scans and biological data. Humans evolved on what we classify as a Class 12 death world. Dr. Marin said, Earth is one of the most dangerous habitable planets we have ever encountered. High gravity, extreme weather, deadly predators, toxic plants, and diseases that can kill in hours. Human ancestors lived under constant threat. She changed the images to show human anatomy. As a result, humans developed unique survival traits. Their reaction time is significantly faster than most species. Their pattern recognition is exceptional. Their threat assessment happens at a subconscious level, allowing them to respond to danger before their conscious mind even registers the threat. Are you saying humans act without thinking? Lord Cassian asked. No, Dr. Marin said. I'm saying they think faster than we do in crisis situations. When Officer Morrison saw the danger, his brain processed dozens of variables instantly. Distance, time, blast radius, optimal protective positioning. He made a complex tactical decision in the time it would take most species to simply recognize that danger existed. She pulled up more data. But there's another factor. Humans have an unusual psychological trait. They extend protective instincts beyond their own species. We have documented cases of humans risking their lives to save animals, strangers, even aliens they just met. This behavior is rare among spacefaring civilizations. Why would they do that? Someone in the seats asked. Dr. Marin smiled. Humans call it empathy. They feel the pain of others as if it were their own. When Officer Morrison saw Princess Theron in danger, his brain did not distinguish between protecting a human or protecting a Calviri. He saw someone who needed help. His instinct to protect activated automatically. So you're saying his actions were instinctive, not rational? Lord Cassian said. I'm saying his actions were both, Dr. Marin said. Humans are capable of rational thought and instinctive action simultaneously. In this case, Officer Morrison's instincts were backed by years of training. He knew how to shield someone from a blast. He knew how to position his body to take the impact. His actions were not random. They were practiced responses to a recognized threat. Emperor Valen leaned forward. Dr. Marin, are you suggesting that humans cannot control these instincts? No, Your Majesty, Dr. Marin said. Humans can and do control their actions. But in high-stress situations, their training overrides their hesitation. Officer Morrison's training taught him to protect others. When he saw danger, that training took over. Lord Cassian looked unhappy. Even if we accept this explanation, it does not change the fact that Officer Morrison violated our laws. Biology is not an excuse for breaking social order. Perhaps not, Dr. Marin said. But understanding biology helps us understand intent. Officer Morrison did not act to challenge your authority or disrespect your customs. He acted according to his nature and his training. Punishing him for that would be like punishing a Calviri for following proper protocol. The court fell into debate. Voices rose from the seats, some arguing in Jake's favor, others insisting that law must be upheld regardless of intent. Jake stood in the center of it all, feeling like a specimen being examined rather than a person being judged. Princess Theron stood again. May I speak? The debate quieted. Emperor Valen gestured for her to continue. I have been thinking about Officer Morrison's words, she said. When he told me to stay still, to trust him. He spoke in our language, but the concepts were human. Trust. Not obedience, not protocol, but trust. He asked me to believe that he would protect me. She looked at Jake. Among our people, trust is built over years of following proper procedures together. But humans seem to trust quickly, even with strangers. Why is that, Officer Morrison? Jake was surprised to be asked directly. I guess we have to trust quickly. On Earth, danger can come from anywhere. We learn to work together with anyone who could help us survive. If you wait too long to trust someone, you might not get another chance. Fascinating, Princess Theron said. So trust is a survival mechanism for humans, not just a social nicety. Yeah, Jake said. I guess so. I trusted that you would stay still when I told you to. And you did. You trusted me to protect you, even though we had never met. That trust saved both of us. Lord Cassian spoke up. This is all very interesting. But we must return to the legal issues. Officer Morrison violated specific laws. The court must decide on appropriate consequences. Emperor Valen raised his hand. We will take another recess. The Imperial family and senior advisors will confer. Officer Morrison will wait for our decision. The chamber emptied again. This time, Jake was left alone. Even Ambassador Chen and Commander Bradford were escorted out. Jake sat on the floor, too tired to stand anymore. He thought about Earth, about his apartment in New York, about his sister and her kids who he had not seen in 2 years. He thought about all the choices that had led him to this moment, standing trial in an alien court for doing what he thought was right. And he thought about the princess's face when he had shielded her. The fear in those black eyes, followed by something else. Trust. She had trusted him. Just like he asked, maybe that counted for something. The wait felt like hours, though Jake knew it was probably only 20 minutes. He sat on the polished floor of the chamber, staring up at the painted stars on the ceiling. He wondered if any of those stars were Earth's sun. Probably not. Earth was too far away, too small, too new to be worth painting on an ancient ceiling. When the doors finally opened, the Calviri filed back in silently. Their faces were impossible to read. Jake stood up, his legs stiff from sitting. Emperor Valen took his seat on the high platform. Empress Sareth sat beside him, her expression neutral. Princess Theron looked nervous, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. "Officer Jake Morrison," Emperor Valen said. His voice echoed through the chamber. "This court has heard testimony about your actions. We have examined evidence. We have debated the law and its application. Now we must render judgment." Jake braced himself. Whatever came next, he would face it. He had done the right thing. He knew that. If the Calviri could not see it, that was their problem. "By the letter of Calviri law," Emperor Valen continued, "you are guilty of all charges. You did touch a member of the royal family without authorization. You did presume authority over imperial security. You did disrupt a diplomatic ceremony. These facts are not in dispute." Jake's heart sank. Guilty. He was guilty by their laws. What would the punishment be? Prison? Deportation? He glanced at Ambassador Chen, who looked pale but determined. "However," Emperor Valen said, and Jake's attention snapped back to him, "the law is not merely about punishment. It is about maintaining order and protecting our people. And in this case, the person who needed protecting was my daughter." The Emperor stood. "There is an ancient provision in Calviri law, one that has not been invoked in over 300 years. It is called the Defender's Right. It states that any person who saves a member of the royal family from death may be judged not only by their actions, but by their character and intent." Lord Cassian looked surprised. "Your Majesty, the Defender's Right is extremely rare. It requires proof of exceptional character, not merely good intentions." "Then we shall examine Officer Morrison's character," Emperor Valen said. "Lord Cassian, call the witnesses." Over the next hour, Jake watched in amazement as people he had worked with gave testimony. Commander Kyle Bradford spoke about Jake's service record, about missions where Jake had volunteered for the most dangerous assignments. A woman named Julie Hayes, a diplomat Jake had worked with on Mars, talked about how Jake had saved her from a hostile crowd by negotiating in broken Martian dialect. Another security officer, Pete Gordon, described how Jake had mentored younger recruits, teaching them not just combat skills but cultural sensitivity. Even Dr. Marin returned to provide additional information. She showed data about Jake's psychological profile, assessments that had been done during his security clearance process. The data showed a man with high empathy scores, strong ethical foundations, and a consistent pattern of helping others even at personal cost. "Officer Morrison volunteers at a youth center in New York when he is on Earth," Dr. Marin said. "He teaches self-defense to teenagers in high-crime areas. He does not get paid for this. He does it because, in his words, he wants kids to feel safe." Jake had forgotten he had said that during his psych evaluation. Hearing it repeated in an alien court made him feel exposed and uncomfortable. Ambassador Chen spoke last. "I have known Jake Morrison for 3 years. In that time, I have watched him handle difficult situations with patience and wisdom. When other security officers wanted to use force, Jake always looked for peaceful solutions first. He learned multiple alien languages, not because it was required, but because he wanted to communicate directly with the people he was protecting. He respects other cultures, even when they are very different from his own." She paused. "The night before the reception, Jake asked me about Calviri gift-giving customs. He wanted to know the proper way to receive a gift, if anyone offered him one. He studied for hours to make sure he would not accidentally offend anyone. That is who Jake Morrison is. He cares about doing things right." When the testimonies ended, Lord Cassian looked thoughtful. "The evidence of good character is substantial, but it does not change the facts of the case." "No," Emperor Valen agreed. "It does not change the facts, but it changes our understanding of those facts. Officer Morrison did not act to challenge our authority or to disrespect our laws. He acted to preserve life, and his entire history shows a pattern of placing others' welfare above his own." Princess Theron stood. "Honored father, I wish to make a formal request." Emperor Valen looked at his daughter with what might have been pride, Speak, Theron. I request that Officer Morrison be named as my personal guardian, she said. The court erupted. Voices shouted in protest or surprise. Lord Cassian looked shocked. Even Empress Sereth seemed startled. Emperor Valen raised his hand for silence. Explain your reasoning, daughter. Princess Theron descended from the platform again. She walked to where Jake stood and turned to face the court. A personal guardian is authorized to protect a member of the royal family by any means necessary, she said. It is a position of great honor and responsibility. Traditionally, only the most trusted Calviri warriors are chosen for this role. And you wish to give this honor to a human? Lord Cassian asked. To a foreigner who does not understand our ways? I wish to give this honor to the man who saved my life, Princess Theron said. Officer Morrison's actions at the reception were not violations. They were the actions of a guardian protecting his charge. If he had been my official guardian, everything he did would have been not only legal, but expected. But he was not your guardian, Lord Cassian said. He was a foreign security officer, with no authority. Then let us correct that oversight, Princess Theron said. By naming him as my guardian now, we retroactively validate his actions. More importantly, we acknowledge that sometimes the rules must adapt to reality. This is unprecedented, Lord Cassian said. So was the situation, Princess Theron replied. Officer Morrison faced a threat that our security protocols did not anticipate. He responded with skills and instincts that our people do not possess. Why should we punish him for having abilities we lack? Emperor Valen sat back on his throne. He looked at Jake for a long moment. Officer Morrison, you have heard my daughter's request. The position of personal guardian is not easy. It would require you to leave your current position and undergo extensive training in Calviri customs, laws, and combat techniques. You would live among my people. Possibly for years, you would be responsible for Theron's safety at all times. Do you understand what this would mean? Jake's mind raced. Leave Earth's diplomatic service. Live among aliens. Study their culture full-time. It was not what he had planned for his career, but as he looked at Princess Theron, at the hope in her black eyes, he understood something important. This was not just about him. This was about building a bridge between humans and Calviri. This was about proving that different species could understand each other. Work together. Protect each other. I understand, Jake said. And I accept. The chamber fell silent. Emperor Valen exchanged glances with his wife. Empress Sereth nodded slowly. Very well, Emperor Valen said. But I have one condition. Officer Morrison must undergo the traditional guardian training. He must learn our language fluently. He must study our history, our laws, our combat forms. This will take time, perhaps a year or more. Only when he has completed this training will he be formally named as Theron's guardian. Until then, he will be a guardian candidate, under close supervision. I accept the condition, Jake said. He did not know what he was getting into, but he would figure it out. That was what humans did. They adapted. Emperor Valen stood, then let it be recorded. Jake Morrison, human, is hereby named guardian candidate to Princess Theron Kalis Valendor. The charges against him are dismissed on the grounds that his actions, while technically violations, were consistent with the duties and instincts of a guardian. He will begin training immediately. The Calviri in the seats began speaking among themselves. Some looked approving, others skeptical. Lord Cassian still looked concerned, but he bowed to the Emperor's decision. Princess Theron smiled at Jake. It was the first genuine smile he had seen from her. Thank you, she said quietly, for saving me. And for accepting this. Thank you for trusting me, Jake said. Both then and now. Commander Bradford approached with Ambassador Chen. Kyle looked stunned. You're really doing this? Leaving the service? Yeah, Jake said. I guess I am. Lisa smiled. You're going to be famous back on Earth. The first human to serve in a royal alien court. They'll probably make movies about you. Great, Jake said. Just what I always wanted. But as he looked around the grand chamber, at the aliens who had gone from judging him to accepting him, Jake felt something unexpected. He felt hope. Maybe humans and Calviri were not so different after all. Maybe they could learn from each other. Maybe one man throwing himself in front of a bomb had started something bigger than anyone expected. The ceremony took place 3 days later, in the same crystal halls where the bomb had exploded. Workers had repaired the damage quickly, but Jake could still see scorch marks on one wall where the blast had hit. He wondered if they left them there on purpose. As a reminder, Jake stood at the center of the hall wearing a new uniform. It was a blend of human and Calviri styles, dark blue with silver trim. The Calviri tailor who made it had measured Jake carefully, asking questions about human anatomy that Jake did not know how to answer. The result was clothing that looked alien but felt comfortable. Around the hall, guests from dozens of worlds had gathered. This ceremony was more than just naming a guardian. It was a political statement. Humans and Calviri were moving past the incident, turning it into something positive. The news feeds across the galaxy had been covering the story for days. Jake Morrison, the human who saved a princess and changed his whole life. Ambassador Chen stood near the front row, looking proud. Commander Bradford was next to her, still shaking his head in disbelief. Jake had spent the last 3 days talking with them, making arrangements. His apartment in New York would be put in storage. His job with Earth's diplomatic security was officially on hold, though everyone knew he probably would not come back to it. His sister had called from Earth, crying and laughing at the same time, saying their mother would have been so proud. The Calviri royal family entered from a side door. Emperor Valen and Empress Sareth walked first, wearing their formal crowns. Behind them came Princess Theron, dressed in white instead of her usual silver. The color meant new beginnings in Calviri culture. Jake had learned that during one of his quick lessons with Dr. Marin. The doctor had become an unexpected ally. She was fascinated by having a human to study up close. But she was also kind. She had spent hours teaching Jake basic Calviri customs, warning him about common mistakes humans made, preparing him for what was coming. Training will be hard, she had told him. The Calviri will expect you to learn everything. Language, history, combat, etiquette, philosophy. You will make many mistakes. They will judge you. But remember, you already proved yourself when it mattered most. Now, as the royal family approached, Jake tried to remember everything he had learned. He bowed at the correct angle, held the position for the correct amount of time, straightened with the proper posture. Princess Theron smiled slightly, which Jake took as a sign he had done it right. Emperor Valen began speaking in Calviri. Jake's earpiece translated, but he tried to follow along in the original language. He caught maybe every third word. We gather today to acknowledge an act of courage and to establish a new tradition, the emperor said. For the first time in our history, a non-Calviri will be trained as a royal guardian. This decision was not made lightly. It recognizes both the debt we owe to Jake Morrison and the potential for greater understanding between our peoples. The emperor gestured to Lord Cassian, who carried a long box made of dark wood. Cassian opened the box to reveal a weapon. It looked like a staff, about 5 feet long, made of metal that glowed faintly blue. This is a guardian staff, Emperor Valen said. It has been in my family for 8 generations. The guardian who carried it saved my great-grandfather from assassins. The weapon is both ceremonial and functional. It represents the guardian's authority and responsibility. He took the staff from Cassian and held it out to Jake. Jake Morrison, do you accept the position of guardian candidate? Do you swear to protect Princess Theron from all threats, to study our ways with dedication, and to uphold the honor of this position? Jake took the staff. It was heavier than it looked, balanced perfectly. He could feel the weight of history in it. I accept, Jake said in Calviri. The words came out awkward, but he said them. I will protect the princess. I will learn your ways. I will honor this position. A murmur went through the crowd. Jake, speaking Calviri, even badly, seemed to mean something to them. Emperor Valen placed his hand on Jake's shoulder. Then let it be known throughout the Empire and beyond. Jake Morrison is named Guardian Candidate to Princess Theron. May his service bring honor to both our peoples. The ceremony continued with more speeches and formal presentations. Representatives from other species offered congratulations and gifts. Jake stood through all of it, holding the staff, trying not to look as overwhelmed as he felt. When it finally ended, Princess Theron approached him. "Walk with me," she said. "There is something I want to show you." They left the crystal halls together, trailed at a distance by 2 Calviri guards. The guards looked uncomfortable having a human walking freely with the princess, but they kept their distance. Jake noticed they carried traditional weapons, swords that hummed with some kind of energy. Princess Theron led him through corridors of the station to an observation deck. The wall was transparent, showing the stars outside. Dozens of ships moved through space nearby, trading vessels and military cruisers and passenger transports. In the distance, Jake could see the outline of a planet, blue and green like Earth, but with 3 moons instead of 1. "That is Calvir Prime," Princess Theron said. "My home world. In a few weeks, you will go there to begin your training. The Royal Academy is in the northern mountains, far from the cities. You will live there for at least a year, maybe longer." "I'm ready," Jake said, though he was not sure if that was true. "Are you?" Princess Theron asked. She looked at him with those black eyes that seemed to see everything. "You will be alone there. The other trainees are all Calviri. They have grown up with our culture, our language, our history. You will be starting from nothing. It will be harder than anything you have done before." "I've been through hard training," Jake said. "Marine boot camp, security certification, wilderness survival. I can handle it." "This is different," Princess Theron said. "In those trainings, you were with other humans. People who thought like you, who shared your background. At the academy, you will be the only human. The other students will not understand you. Some will resent you. They will think you received this honor through luck, not merit." Jake was quiet for a moment. She was right. He had not thought about that part, being the only human in a school full of aliens who might hate him. "So why did you ask for me to be your guardian?" Jake asked. "If it's going to cause so many problems?" Princess Theron turned back to the window. "Because you saved my life, without thinking about problems. Because when you spoke to me in those seconds before the explosion, I felt something I had never felt before. I felt what you humans call trust. Real trust, not the formal trust of protocol and procedure." She was quiet for a moment. "My people are good at many things. We are organized, efficient, and honorable. But we have lost something over the centuries. We have forgotten how to act on instinct, how to trust our feelings. We follow the rules so carefully that we sometimes forget why the rules exist." "To protect people," Jake said. "Yes," Princess Theron said. "To protect people. But somewhere along the way, protecting the rules became more important than protecting the people. When you threw yourself in front of that bomb, you reminded my entire court of something essential. The law should serve life, not the other way around." She smiled. "My father is wise. He saw what I saw. This is about more than you being my guardian. This is about changing how my people think. If a human can learn our ways, maybe we can learn human ways. Maybe we can find a balance between our order and your instinct." "That's a lot of pressure," Jake said. "Yes," Princess Theron agreed. "But I think you can handle it. You already did the hardest part. You proved that a human and a Calviri can trust each other completely in a moment of crisis. Everything else is just details." They stood together in silence, watching the ships move past the window. Jake thought about the year ahead, about learning an alien language and alien customs, about being judged by every student and teacher at the academy. It scared him, but it also excited him in a way he had not felt in years. "Can I ask you something?" Jake said. "Of course. In that moment before the bomb exploded, when I told you to trust me, did you? Really?" Princess Theron considered the question. "Yes. I did not know why, and I did not have time to think about it. But when you spoke those words, something in me believed you. Maybe it was the tone of your voice. Maybe it was the determination I saw in your eyes. Or maybe it was something deeper, something instinctive. She looked at him. My people would say that is irrational. We should not trust based on feelings. But you humans seem to know something we have forgotten. Sometimes feelings are faster and more accurate than logic. Sometimes they're wrong too, Jake said. Humans make mistakes when we trust too quickly. But not this time, Princess Theron said. This time, your instinct was correct, and my trust was justified. That is worth remembering. They returned to the crystal halls. The ceremony reception was still going on, aliens from different worlds mingling and making small talk. Jake saw Ambassador Chen gesturing for him to come over. There were probably a dozen diplomats who wanted to meet him, to ask questions, to establish connections. But before Jake could leave, Princess Theron touched his arm lightly. Just a brief contact, but enough to make him stop. Thank you, she said. Not just for saving my life. Thank you for showing my people that there are different ways to be honorable, different ways to be brave. You're welcome, Jake said. And thank you for giving me a chance to prove myself. You already proved yourself, Princess Theron said. Everything else is just making it official. She walked back toward her family, leaving Jake standing alone. He looked down at the guardian staff in his hand, at the blue glow running along its length. He thought about his life a week ago, standing guard at a diplomatic reception, bored and tired. He thought about the split-second decision that had changed everything. And he thought about the year ahead, the challenges and the learning and the difficulties. It would be hard. It would be lonely at times. But it would also be incredible. He would be building something new. Something that had never existed before. A bridge between two species. Built on trust and courage. Ambassador Chen finally reached him. There you are. Come on. The Telkran ambassador wants to meet you. And the Hive Collective wants to know if humans would consider establishing a Guardian exchange program. You're famous now, Jake. Everyone wants to talk to you. Jake followed her into the crowd, still holding his staff. He shook hands and appendages, answered questions in broken Calviri and decent English, smiled for pictures with aliens he had never seen before. Through it all, he kept thinking about what Princess Theron had said. You already proved yourself. Maybe she was right. Maybe everything else really was just details. He had acted on instinct, trusted his training, and saved a life. That was what mattered. The rest, all the ceremonies and politics and training, was just the galaxy figuring out what that moment meant. As the reception wore on and the station's artificial day faded into night, Jake stood on the observation deck again, alone this time. He looked out at the stars, at the vast darkness between them, at the countless worlds he would probably never see. But he would see one world, Calvir Prime. He would walk its mountains and study in its academy. He would learn its language and understand its people. And maybe, just maybe, he would help those people understand humans a little better. It was not the life he had planned, but it was the life he had chosen, in one split second of action, that he would never regret. Jake Morrison smiled and headed back inside. He had a lot of work to do.